Recapping the busy 2017-2018 academic school year for the College Fix, next on the Campus Roundup. Hello, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Campus Roundup at the College Fix. Our top story segment this week focuses on the top 10 most lunatic campus stories from the College Fix over the last academic year. To talk more about this, we welcome College Fix editor Jennifer Cabani for this conversation. And Jen, first of all, let me start by congratulating you and the College Fix. It has been a banner year for the Fix. You have broken some amazing stories. Many of your student reporters have had impact in reversing bad policies, bad decisions by universities. This has been really a banner year for you, so congratulations.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And we're going to have a little fun today. I mean, we're going to look at the lighter side of this. This is not about reporting. It's about, for lack of a better word, mocking some of the absolutely absurd things that go on college campuses that if you didn't report them, many people would think they couldn't possibly be true. We start with Yale University, who censors a hostile piece of historic artwork. You have a statue at Yale where you had a Puritan and a Native American side by side. And the fact that the Puritan and the Indian seemed to be getting along meant that this was hostile and had to be censored.
Well, so first of all, the Puritan had like a gun or a rifle, and the Indian had a bow. But when the university censored it, they only covered up the Puritan's gun. They left the Indian's bow. So what does that tell you?
Well, it's very Freudian, isn't it? I mean, you've got the phallic gun that gets covered up and the bow. You could do a whole psychoanalytic reading of this that some English professor somewhere is going to pick up on.
Yeah, exactly. But then the Committee on Art in Public Spaces is the name of the committee that decided to censor this artwork that was apparently fine for hundreds of years or however long it stood on Yale's campus until somebody got their panties in a bunch over it. But how Orwellian, that the name of that committee, the Committee on Public Art and Space or whatever, it's just like, it's scary how crazy these campuses have gotten, and that they can't even have a piece of artwork up, and students can't manage to acknowledge its historical context. They have to freak out about it and have it covered and removed. So that was unfortunate. Well,
I shudder to think what this bureaucrat, this diversity bureaucrat in charge of that particular committee, how many thousands of dollars they must make a year. And the other thing that, of course, is ironic about this is that whenever there's anti-Trump art or whenever there's some shocking anti-Christian piece of art on a college campus, this same committee swoops in screaming freedom of art, freedom of expression. Doesn't apply to a couple hundred-year-old statue, but it certainly applies to any kind of over-the-top anti-Trump piece of art that we see on a college campus today.
Yeah, the hypocrisy is ridiculous.
Go on to our next story, Mike. We've got an interesting one here. This was such a great one that I actually brought this into my university classrooms this year, both of my classes. The kids just were stunned. These are English majors, Jen, who are juniors and seniors. They think they've seen it all. When I showed them this, they could not. They thought it was something from The Onion. Ecosexual professor spurs movement, and the spurs there is a great verb given the topic. Have sex with the earth to save it. Talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so, secular progressives, they don't believe them that they're atheists. They actually do have a God. It's called Mother Nature. And they love to worship the planet, hug the trees. These professors took videos of themselves writhing around in the mud and wiping it all over each other. It's quite amazing. But, it just goes to show you the leftist secular progressive mindset where they try to pretend like they don't have a bias. But when it comes down to it, their religion is Mother Nature, worshiping the created instead of the creator. And this is a perfect example of that.
And it's not just their religion that's Mother Nature. It's apparently their fetish that is Mother Nature. And, the fact that we gender Mother Nature as Mother Nature and we call Gaia the Earth Mother, I'd be willing to bet there is no signed consent form from Mother Nature or for the Earth for all of this creepy rubbing that's going on college campuses.
Yes, absolutely. I have no idea if that redwood tree gave that woman consent, but perhaps.
Gives all new meaning to the word petrified. Let's move on to the next one. We've got video. Student radio hosts yanked from air. Oh, this was a good one, too. A couple of student radio hosts with a more conservative bent were actually pulled from campus radio, suspended and banned from the recording booth after simply using the word tranny.
Yeah, this one is troubling because you should see the video. The video we have of this incident, it's actually caught on tape, and it was viewed like tens of thousands of times on our YouTube channel. But the kids were just talking about their local version of Antifa, and they were saying it's kind of a mellow version of Antifa, but the kid that leads it, them because they're a tranny or what have you. And this woman comes storming in with a campus police officer and demands that she's like, okay, you guys are out of here. You said a hate word. You're out of here. And these poor kids, they were like, what? I mean, did you have to call the police on us? I mean, it was so Orwellian. It was really scary. And actually, unfortunately, they never got their radio show back. The university permanently suspended them, which is another word for saying, your show's been axed. So that was a travesty of justice, a violation against the First Amendment, and political correctness gone amok.
Yeah, what's really unfortunate about that is transsexuals actually have adopted that word back to use on themselves, right? There's a very definitive strain of transsexualism, cross-dressers, who want to hold on to that term in the same way that other minority groups have used what used to be slurs to their own advantage. And these boys were just sort of throwing that out there. And to have the cops brought in here, I mean, this is the definition, isn't it, Jen, of the thought, literally, it's the thought police.
Yes, absolutely. And I'm sure this radio station manager has never watched one episode of RuPaul's Drag Queen, because tranny is like the most tame word they use. Trust me on that one.
Right, exactly. And of course, again, another most likely cisgendered, heterosexual, liberal white woman deciding who gets to be offended when. Let's go to the next story. Another important story. Dozens of students pose nearly nude. I think of the old TV show Arrested Development. You had a never nude in that show. Dozens of students pose nearly nude for campus newspaper's sex issue. Talk about this little gem.
Well, so we say nearly nude because they would position like a little teddy bear in front of their, breasts or, poster. They'd hide behind a poster. But I was thinking to myself, thank God the internet was not around when I was that age, because I mean, these kids are morons. I mean, this is going to be out there forever. Do they have any concept of that? I mean, I just don't understand what was going through their minds, but it just goes to show you, that these kids do not understand the internet is forever. And also their sense of decency is I don't think on target here.
Well, at least the Girls Gone Wild ladies from 10 and 20 years ago had the excuse that they were stone drunk, right? I mean, they had.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Girls Gone Wild. That's right. That
Remember?
Was pre-internet. Yeah.
And by the way, none of them ever forcibly dragged a teddy bear into their posters, into the picture, right?
Yeah,
Poor teddy bear. Again, I'm sure there were no consent forms there as well.
Yeah,
move on to the next story, Mike. What do we have? Good one here. University event aims to combat Christian privilege. Well, this was inevitable, right? Any traditional, any conservative, any Republican, any non-liberal worldview, attitude, precept, or statement must smack of some privilege. And so I guess you could say 2017, 2018 was the academic year where the word Christian privilege entered the lexicon. Talk about this one at George Washington University.
Yeah, so I mean, basically, they wanted to lecture Christians on their privilege, and this story went crazy. It was trending on Twitter and everything like that. But people were like, yeah, right, Christian privilege, because I mean, let's talk about it. I mean, if you openly profess your faith in Jesus Christ, you're called a bigot, white supremacist or racist. I mean, Christians are like the lowest of the low in America nowadays. I mean, if you look at the way Hollywood portrays us, they have no mercy for us. So Christian privilege, yeah, right. I mean, you're still allowed to bash Christianity. It's bashed all the time in Hollywood and on campus and elsewhere. So I think people were just kind of like, give us a break, and not to mention the global aspect of it, because there's men and women who they have to meet in church underground. They're beheaded. Their churches are set on fire. I mean, Christian privilege, give me a break. Yeah,
Christians are still the most persecuted religious group the world over. And if you go back to the 2,000-year history of Christianity, one of the things that Christians historically had, their greatest privilege has been, is being killed for the cause. And so to treat this as trivially as liberal progressives do is a very dangerous thing. And nevertheless, I think we're going to see more of this. Anything that the left doesn't approve of, and they really, really don't approve of Christianity, is going to be branded this way.
That's true.
Let's check our next story out for our top 10 stories in no particular order for the academic year 2017-2018. This is a good one, too. Slutty sheep. Veteran academics warn college students are going off the rails. This is really actually an important story about a warning. Talk about the warning that was issued by a couple of professors.
Well, I mean, they're basically saying these students are kind of like mindless sheep going through, college, not learning to think for themselves, basically debauchery, anything goes, do whatever whatever feels good to you. And so that the traditional liberal arts is being replaced by a mindless party, essentially. And these professors are sounding the alarm on that.
Well, I love the use of the phrase slutty sheep, promiscuous ovines. When you think about the fact that condoms actually used to be made from sheepskin, I would be willing to bet that the average sheep is a lot less promiscuous than your typical college undergrad.
Yeah, probably.
Let's take a look at our next story, Mike. Next story on the docket here: Dismantle Whiteness mural install. I wonder if there is a committee to determine the legitimacy of art on campus with this one. A Dismantle Whiteness mural is now installed at USC in California.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of feminist artists to thank for this one, and they put it up on the inside of a building wall. They were really mad that the school wouldn't let them put them out like in the center of the quad. They wanted everybody to see this, and then the university thought better of that and like kind of put it behind this wall. But at any rate, it still made a big splash. This article landed on Drudge for us, and I just feel sorry for white males on college campuses nowadays. I mean, they are like enemy number one. These poor guys cannot do anything right. Anything they do, they're going to get bashed for it. But this is another example of secular, progressive, leftist, thought police, like trying to keep the man down and tell them how horrible they are and make them feel sorry for, all the wrongs of history back from day one, starting with Adam, basically.
Well, I think the patriarchy had the last laugh on that one because they called it Dismantle Whiteness, and right in the middle of the word dismantle, staring out at you is the word man at the very center of the protest. So way to go, girls. You couldn't even figure that one out. What's our next story for the year? Yale decolonizes English departments. I didn't realize that some colonial force had actually stormed the beachheads of English departments and they needed to be broken of colonial law. But anyway, Yale decided they're going to decolonize English departments after complaints that studying white authors actively harms them. Can you explain the verb actively there, Jen? How are you actively harmed by having to read a book?
Yeah, we put that in quotes because that's literally what they said. They were saying that reading Chaucer and Shakespeare and Milton, Eliot, that was like actively harming them because I guess the authors have white skin. And who understands this stuff anyway? Shakespeare is probably the greatest writer that ever walked the face of this earth. And his stuff is so on point even today. And, so your brain cannot wrap your mind around these complaints that these people come up with. But, sure enough, Yale caved. And now if you're majoring in English, you can skip the class that teaches Shakespeare. This is what it's come to.
Well, as a professor of Shakespeare, I want to say that you weren't paid in any way, shape, or form to point that out. And as a professor of Shakespeare, I would also say Shakespeare is much bigger than whiteness or manness or Caucasianness. He is a poet for all time. I secretly believe that why people get harmed by reading the great white authors is because they can point to very little in other cultures that has attained that level of literary excellence. He makes you feel bad by attrition. It's a good thing that the great writers of the Western canon don't focus on their white maleness. They focus on the universal truths that once upon a time kids used to study at college but no longer do. Mike, what's our next story? Next on the docket, no whites allowed. There's a lot of this anti-white stuff. No whites allowed. Day of absence lives on despite last year's uproar at Evergreen State College. So this is a really important story for a number of reasons. First of all, no whites allowed is continuing. The same thing that got that university, this hippie Evergreen State University, in a lot of trouble, is back again this year. And there's a parallel story, I know, Jen, that was done, showing exactly how many students Evergreen has lost since last year. They had to lay off more than 25 different faculty or adjuncts. They have to cut their budget by about $6 million to be able to make up for what they've lost. And yet these kids are still running rampant at Evergreen. Yeah,
so the leaders of Evergreen tried to clamp down on this, and they changed it. It was the day of absence had been going on for years. They used to have the students of color meet off campus. And then last year, what caused all the drama was they asked the white people to stay off campus. Well, anyways, they realized that was incredibly racist and, against, the rights of people. And so the administration was like, well, let's not do that. Let's hold a inclusion symposium. So they held this inclusion symposium, but the students were having none of that. So they're like, no, we're going to still have our no whites allowed day of absence. So they ended up scheduling it on their own, and they had some like no whites yoga and no whites allowed, poem readings and all sorts of things. They held it off campus. And, so it just goes to show you the inmates are still running the asylum at Evergreen State College, the gift that keeps on giving.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it, that the degree to which liberal kids don't understand the definition of words, that you can actually use the word inclusion as a tool to exclude certain people. That shows you right there that English departments probably do need to be decolonized, not unfortunately from white authors, but from liberal professors who are allegedly unable to teach vocabulary to their own kids. And we also know from the biology professor who was forced to leave campus a year ago, he won a $3.5 million settlement from the school, and yet the kids, there's still not enough moxie from the administration of that school to actually stop this garbage.
Yeah, so I mean, I think at least the administrator's like, well, you can't have the no whites allowed stuff on campus, so make sure you have that off campus. But from what I hear, the school is still kind of a train wreck. So, and now they're losing money, they're losing enrollment, and I mean, hopefully other campuses take note and wake up, but.
When your own student body refuses to acknowledge those realities, what probably has to happen is Evergreen students, almost all of whom receive some kind of tuition offset. Maybe if the university took that away to pay for everything they've lost on account of those kids would smarten up a little bit. And we have one more top 10 story for this academic year. Conservative leader at Stanford is, drumroll please, Susan Rice's son. What kind of family dynamics is going on in this family, Jen?
Well, so I wrote this article and I talked to John, and, he is a fantastic young man. He's very smart. He's very sincere. A lot of people when the story broke was like, oh, he's a plant. No, he's not. He actually is sincere, and he loves liberty. He loves what Rush Limbaugh was talking about, Mark Levin was talking about, and he's fighting the good fight at Stanford. And you know what? Props to Susan Rice. I think she deserves a little credit. I know conservatives like to bash her and they're mad at her or what have you, but at the end of the day, she raised a great son, and he's working his butt off on Stanford to make sure that conservative ideas are heard. So it's a positive story, and it was a really fun story to write. And who didn't get a kick out of it, right? I mean, it was kind of like, what?
Yeah, amen. I feel the same way every time I see Juan Williams and the light in his eye when he talks about his boy, who's also a conservative. You can just see it's one of the few things that maybe we ought to require all liberals to have at least one conservative child, because it seems to melt their crusty little hearts, doesn't it? The twinkle in their eye when they look on those kids, regardless of the political background. We need a lot more of that, don't we?
Absolutely, we do.
Jen, this has been an amazing year for you guys, and I am personally thrilled to have been part of it for the second half. Looking forward to being with you guys again in the fall when we ratchet this up again. But great job to all your editors, all your students. They've been a delight to talk to on the air. You're doing what colleges aren't doing. You're doing what college journalism schools aren't doing. You're preparing these kids for real balanced, fair journalism, which is what the country really needs.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we were really excited. We did have a fantastic year, millions of page views. I mean, just overwhelmed by the support and the readership. We have so many students headed off to internships, journalism internships. A lot of our alumni landing, long-term media fellowships, plenty more working at the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Associated Press, Daily Caller, Reason. It goes on and on and on. It's just so gratifying. We love what we do, and we're looking forward to another strong year. An amazing team. Be sure to stay up on all the latest news and information from the College Fix editors by joining us on all of our social media platforms. Jennifer Gabani, editor of the College Fix, thank you so much for your time and for your time all year.